Bonjour et bienvenue ici sur les pistes de descente très techniques de San Remo en Italie où nous sommes venus tester les nouveaux amortisseurs Vivid Air et Vivid Ressort. Alors techniquement, peu de nouveautés. Par contre, on note l'apparition de deux boutons magiques jusque-là réservés au Team Pro Black Box. Le premier ici, c'est pour la détente en début de course. Le second, ici, détente en fin de course. Le but, eh bien, tout simplement plaquer la roue au sol, quelles que soient les configurations du terrain. Et ici, croyez-moi, il y en a vraiment besoin.
This location is where we came last year to do our initial black box testing before the athletes headed out for the entire World Cup season. This has become the hot spot for the winter for all suspension testing for World Cup athletes, so we felt this is a great place to come and get the media introduced to these new shocks. Overall, the shock is a lot smoother than the previous version. We spent a lot of time working on the internal circuitry of the shock to really smooth out the damping and make it even more consistent than it was before, and the riders seem to really notice that. We've been in a testing phase on it for a good portion of a year and a half, and the black box riders have been using it full-time at races for exactly a year. We started testing with them basically the same week that we're here and the same tracks that we're on right now. Danny Hart was the rider who was really getting the first taste of that shock here on these very tracks, so it's kind of nice to come back here and with Danny again and kind of show the shock off to everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I come here a lot with the tracks being so rough, and it's just an all-round better shock. It holds up in the rough stuff, it doesn't pack down, and you don't blow through the travel, but it's still sensitive where you need it to be at the top of the travel, and in the corner when it's really a little bit rough and there's a few bumps, it just tracks the ground much better than anything I've ever rode before. So tracks like Val di Sole, where you have little bumps that are quite constant, and then you have some really big hits that it's really hard to control the bike sometimes. So this, it'll absorb it and you won't lose any speed, and you'll just keep tracking over the ground and you'll be able to keep in a straight line.
Something that all riders are looking for is an increase in small bump sensitivity. What we've done on the new Vivid is created a new technology we call countermeasure. Countermeasure reduces the amount of force needed to initiate the shock's movement from top out to virtually 0 pounds. The previous models of Vivid took about 40 to 60 pounds to get that shock moving, so this is a massive improvement. So every time you get that shock topped out and then the rear wheel contacts the ground, you're going to feel a real difference in how soft that shock is initially. As soon as the wheel contacts the ground, you're generating traction. You're not skipping across anything. That wheel is settling as fast as possible onto the bump that you're landing on. One of the foundations of RockShox rear shock damping is the rapid recovery system. What rapid recovery does is it allows the rear wheel to recover faster in between successive hits. This allows the shock to ride higher in its travel in a softer part of the spring rate. However, that's blended into a beginning stroke rebound circuit that has a lot more control than what most standard rebound settings are. So the shock actually feels a bit sluggish in the parking lot compared to what traditional rebound settings are, because you have this slower catch at the top of the stroke that the faster wheel recovery blends into. So that keeps you from having that kind of fast, bucky feeling over those hits, so it gives you a lot of control. It also allows the bike to have greater traction over successive hits, so both in terms of traction through corners as well as braking traction is increased with the use of rapid recovery system. At the end of the day, this shock is the most responsive shock we've ever created. It's the most responsive shock within the RockShox product line. It allows you to absorb more bumps using less of your own energy. So again, you can just pick the lines you want to pick, and you can just forget about that rear end of the bike and just focus on what lines you want to hit going down the trail.